in this lesson, I will show you how to create the program code using Mastercam. This is sometimes referred to as the G code. This is the program language that the routers use for instructions to cut out your part. We will start this lesson by assuming you have all your tool paths verified and corrected. Just before we create the code, though, we need to check all the tools we are using and the depth we are cutting them to. This is mainly done for safety. So let's move over here to the 1/4 inch parameters. And I want to left click on engraving parameters, and I want to focus in on here. We have a depth cut of 1/10 of an inch. Now, a general rule here to follow is you never cut deeper than half the diameter of your bit. So in this instance, I would be okay. Half of a 1/4 inch is 1/8 of an inch, or 0.125, and we're only cutting to 1/10 here. So we would be okay. There are other variables, though, that kind of factor in sometimes. Material hardness, different woods obviously machine differently. For example, we're going to be using in this first exercise, we're going to be using MDF material, and although it machines really nicely, it is quite abrasive on the tool itself because it's mainly made of glue, and it will heat up the tool bit substantially. So even though we're within the rule that we should follow here, I'm going to recommend that for the longevity of the bit, anytime we can keep the bit cooler, it's going to last longer. And I don't want to be replacing tool bits every class or two. So I'm going to suggest you left click on the depth cuts here and just add another cut here. What that does is it will increase the time it takes to machine it, but the tool will work a lot less hard and it won't get nearly as hot. So you'll notice now I have to repost this, and I just want to do this, and hang on, I just want to do this. Boom. Okay, so when I zoom in here and look at this now, you'll see two blue lines, and those two blue lines are equal depth, and they go down to a total of 1/10 of an inch, and that's the two passes that it's going to make to get to the total depth of 1/10. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing on the other one as well. I'm just going to left click on the parameters of this tool. This is the engraving tip tool. Same thing, I could probably get away with just leaving this, but for bit life, I'm going to change it to 2 cuts. And click OK. And I'm going to do this, and there we go. Okay, so we now have our depth of our tool bits checked, and that's good. This next step, though, is where most mistakes happen when G code is being made. Each tool that we have used in this program creates its own file of program code, and if you only have one tool, there's less chance of you making a mistake. But we need to make sure that each tool size is identified in the name of the file that becomes the tool code. So for this particular one, we want to make sure that a 1/4 inch straight engraving bit is added into this name of Riddler Logo 1A. And same thing down here. This one over here, we want to make sure that the engraving bit 005 engraving bit is added into the name here. That way, when we're actually loading the program into the controller of the CNC router, we actually can verify and make sure the right bit is in the router at the same time. That way you won't be trying to cut the wrong program with the wrong bit. So here's how you do that. You want to make sure that only one of these is selected. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to change this one first. You can see I have a check mark up on this folder here. That means I'm in the 1/4 inch toolpath, and I want to right click on parameters, and I want to move up to edit selected operations, and I want to move over to change NC file name. All we're going to do here is I want to add the size of the bit into the file name, and I'm not going to put decimals because that sometimes screws up the naming structure. I'm going to put 25 straight bit. I know when I load this now into the program, I'll be looking for a 1/4 inch straight bit in the router. And we can verify down here that now says Riddler logo 1A 25 straight bit. We're going to do the exact same thing to the engraving bit parameters, right? I've selected the folder, I got the check mark on it. I'm going to right click on parameters, move up to edit selected operations, move over to change NC file name, and on this one I'm going to put 005 engraving bit, just adding it to the name, and we're done. And click here, there. Okay, so the next step is we want to make sure that both these folders are selected. And how you do that, if one's, it doesn't really matter which one is selected, but if one's selected, while holding the shift key, select the other one, left click the other one, and now both are selected. And the next thing you do to create your code is you're going to move up here and left click on G1. A post-processing window opens up, and we're just going to left click on the OK button. And here is where you're going to save your files that are eventually going to be switched over to a zip drive or thumb drive, because you're going to take these files on a thumb drive over to the another machine room where the router is hooked up to. So make sure you know where you're saving them. I'm just going to save them in here, and yeah, it's already got the 25 straight bit name on it. I'm just going to click OK. Takes a second to process, and I'm not going to do anything yet. It's still, yeah, there we go. This all happens automatically. This screen that's popped up now, this is the program language that the router uses to interpret your instructions. Okay, so it's just a bunch of language that the router understands, and it'll follow it, and you'll have the end result that you saw on the screen. I'm just going to close that off. You'll notice that the saving window is waiting for me to accept the next program name, and we've already named it. Don't have to change anything, you just have to hit the save. Same thing, it takes a second to process it, and it also will open up its file of program code, right? And like I said, it's just a bunch of language that the computer understands. I'm going to close it, and you have now successfully created multiple toolpaths, and you've saved them to an area that you can put them on a jump drive or a thumb drive later and bring them over to the router in the other room, and you can actually start cutting out your part. Well done.